video is going to discuss the grading system at the law school. The first thing to note about our grading system is that students are not graded on a curve. That means everyone can get good grades. It's a mastery system of grading. The second thing to note is that the law schools, so all campuses, use a numerical grading system to reflect the academic performance, unless it's a pass-fail course. If it's a pass-fail course, we use P and F, and it doesn't impact the GPA, right? So our GPAs are not on a 0 to 4.0 scale, they're actually on a 0 to 100 scale. And this is the scale we use. 80 to 100 is outstanding, 73 to 79 is good to excellent, 66 to 72 is marginal to average, 60 to 65 is below average, and 55 to 60 is a failure or no credit. As for the pass, no pass, fail courses, you can get a P plus for high honors, P minus for marginal but passing, P for passing, and then failure, which is no credit. Students will ask you a lot about the grading system because they're not used to it. And the best way to explain to them how the grading system works at the law school is to show them how these grades compare to the bar exam and other law schools. They also receive this information during orientation, but they really don't digest it all until their grades come out in the spring, which is when you'll get a lot of these questions. So let's start with how the grades were created. Well, as we all know, the California bar uses a numerical system, and how it breaks down loosely is 85 or above, those are rarely awarded. Students don't really get those scores from the California bar. 75 to 80 means a great answer. Those are the model answers on the website. 70 means above passing, it's well written, plus you have a lot of major issues. 65 means you're competent, you can be an attorney. 60 is almost passing, usually missed an issue or analysis. And then 40 to 55 means you're not passing, right? You don't understand the topics. Now, our grading system, which we talked about already, is here on the right. And now let's go through how it relates to the California bar. So we purposely use numbers so they can see, hey, based on how I'm scoring in law school, am I going to pass the California bar? So 80 to 100 is outstanding. That's kind of your model answers, rarely awarded scores. So students who get 80s will feel bad because they associate that as a B, right? But in fact, it's more of an A at our school. The 73 to 79 is good to excellent. Those are your above passing students that are doing well. And then the 66 to 72, that's your marginal to average students. That's the passing competency level. So you'll notice on the California bar, it's 65 to pass. Here at Monterey, it's a 66 to 72, and you need a 70 to actually pass a course. Then you have your below average, which is a 60 to 65, and then the failure no credit, which is the not passing at all. Now let's keep our grading system up. You see we created the numbers based on the California bar, but now let's compare our grading system to other law schools. So other law schools give letter grades. If you notice, there's A plus, A minus, B, C, D, and below, and there's a certain percentage of A pluses that each professor is allowed to give. For example, only 2 to 5% of the class can get A pluses, even if they all did amazing. So other law schools do this curve. Or A/A minus, only 10 to 20% of the class can get an A to A minus, even if you want to give more. How does this compare to our grading system? Well, if they're in the 80 to 100, area in our grading system, those are your A plus students. If they're in the 73 to 79, good to excellent, those are your A minus students. 66 to 72, those are your B plus, B minus students. Those are your average, which you notice at most law school, that's 40 to 60% of the class. Similarly, at Monterey, Kern County, and SLO in the hybrid program, most of the students are going to be falling in this B range, which is the marginal to average, but you will get quite a few that also can get the good to excellent, which are the A grades. And then you have your C pluses, which are the below average students. And then the failure no credit are your C minuses and below. So that's how it compares to other law schools. Again, you're free to share this information with other students. They've gotten it at orientation, but this at least helps them understand what the grades mean when they're using now a numerical system. The other thing that's really important for you to understand as an advisor is 80 and above, again, that's A plus. This is hard to achieve at our law schools. So if they get these grades, you should really praise them and give them a good job, a thumbs up. If they get a cumulative GPA of 79 or above, these are the students that are eligible to petition for an academic overload to graduate in 3 years. Students will usually ask about this in their second year. If they're in the 75 range, which is the A minus, it shows they have an understanding and the mastery of the material, right? So they're still doing really good. You don't want them to feel bad about the 75 grades. I mean, it's not as great as the 80 and above, which are, again, harder to achieve at our law school, but this still is a solid grade. Students who have a cumulative GPA of 75 or above, they can accelerate the program of study, which means they can take more units, take more electives, especially in their starting their 1L summer. Now, they need a 70 to pass a course. 70 is the BB plus. This is a passing score at MCL, again, Kern County, SLO, all the campuses. Most students will get these grades in the 70s. One thing to remember for the students, if they're worried that they're in the 80 range or the 75 range and they feel like, I don't want to accelerate the program, I don't want to take extra units, I'm fine with graduating in 4 years, that's totally fine. Remember, this is designed to be a part-time program for students that are working, so they're not required to accelerate the program. I'll also remind them that it's not graded on a curve, which means everyone can get these 75 and 80 and above grades. They just need to put in the work. So these are always the easy conversations, which are the students that are doing well. The harder conversations is when we get into the lower area of grades. 65, that's a B minus. It shows the students struggling. So students who have a 65 in a course must repeat the course if it is a required course. So those are all your bar courses essentially and required like core mediation, clinical courses. All the required courses for graduation, a 65 or below means you must retake the course. Now, if they have a 60 or below, these are your C's and D's, this is not a passing score. They're not going to get academic credit for the course and it must be repeated, regardless of whether it is a required course or an elective. The last policy that you need to know if you're working with 1L students is we have a help not hurt policy. And this means if their spring course grade is higher than their fall grade, then their fall grade will be replaced with their spring grade. And again, this applies only to the 1L. Now let's do a quick example of how the help not hurt policy works. For example, a student is in contracts, which they take half of contracts in the fall and the other half in spring. It's a 2-semester course. In the fall, they got a 68, which is not passing. And in the spring, they got a 72, which is passing. Under the help not hurt policy, their final grade in that course will be a 72 because the spring grade replaces the fall grade. In another scenario, let's say a student got it switched around where the fall grade is a 72 and the spring grade is a 68. In these cases, the two grades are average. So the 72 in the fall is added to the 68 in the spring. You divide it by 2. That means they got a 70 overall in contracts as their final course grade. And a 70 is passing. So you could see it depends on how the student does. The help not hurt policy is really there just to acknowledge that some students struggle in the fall. And if they manage to show that they can do it in the spring, we don't want to penalize them for having a slower start in the fall. Now you can read more about all this stuff in the actual handbook. The students have this handbook, but it's also helpful for the advisors to read it as well at the link below. And if you have more questions, of course, you can always ask us. Now, the last thing I wanted to show you was what actual professors get when it comes to scoring, in case you're curious, because that was the information we gave to the students, which were the slides at orientation. But every professor at the school gets this Monterey College of Law exam scoring guidelines, which explains in detail what each of these numbers mean for grades, right? The outstanding, the very good, satisfactory good, etc. And it tells them, hey, this means the student missed minor issues, lacked complete discussion, organized and clear reasoning, analysis was okay, but they're still missing some of those issues. 65 means it's unsatisfactory, it's weak and poor analysis, and the issues weren't addressed or lacks organization. And then it breaks down what is considered very good, satisfactory, or a fail for each of the components that we look for in essays or writing, which is issue spotting, rule statements, analysis, conclusion, organization. And so you'll get a copy of this as well, but this is what professors are given when they're creating their grading scales and grading people's midterms and finals so that they can understand what they should be looking for. You'll also get this exam grading memo that was created by the faculty, which explains the whole grading system, grading on curves, good answers. It talks about grading in 5-point increments, all that stuff, which you don't have to read the whole thing, but it's good to kind of get an idea of what professors have to look at before grading. So if you get student questions, you can answer them if they don't understand why they might have received a certain grade in a course.